Om. 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 Sahana bhavatu, sahano bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahe, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashiva Samarambha Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. So welcome everyone to today's talk. So we've had a little bit of a break, well, a long break, and we're back on track now. And so today we're going to be talking about a very practical issue. So it is about how to live peacefully in a world full of negativity. So I'm going to sort of explain a little bit what we mean by negativities and where they come from, and then understand our duties and our responsibilities, and accepting and embracing the universal laws. And so whatever I'm going to talk today comes from the Vedic wisdom that we've been talking about, so from the Vedas, from the scriptures, but I'm not going to be referring to them. So I'm directly, so I'm not going to be quoting from them. I'm not going to be using any technical terms. So that's what we'll be doing today. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll be having an interactive session where we'll be able to discuss this in a lot more detail about, about how we can change this in our lives, what we can do to it in our lives. So really, in some ways, there's not very much new today, but maybe just looking at some of the things in a slightly different light. So I just wanted to talk a bit about what we mean by negativity. So I'm just using this word very loosely. So it's no technical definition or anything. So basically what we would say, all these bad things happening in the world, all the negative things happening in the world is what we're talking about here. So just I'm going to be using the term very loosely and today. So what we see at the international level and the national level, wars, conflicts, we see displaced people, we see calamities, some serious ones, some not so serious ones, extreme weather. We see crimes at all levels, so mass crime, occasional opportunistic crime to vulnerable people, all sorts of crimes to children, all sorts of crimes. And today, the definition of crimes keep on increasing. For instance, like we've even got cyber crimes, all these sorts of things that come under this. And then we see corruption. So corruption in the world everywhere. And I used to think that, coming from a third world country myself, I kind of used to think that corruption doesn't exist in the UK or would never exist in the UK. But obviously now I've got a very different notion of all that. And so it's not something that's restricted to some of the, third world countries or whatever, but corruption is everywhere and we all know it. And there is injustice at all levels, so injustice, and that's a term that we might need to explain a little bit further as we go along. But things that are really, that shouldn't happen to people, and things that in the eyes of the law or whatever seem completely unfair. And And then there is worldwide suffering at all levels, and suffering of people not being taken care of. And recently I've been thinking a lot about care of the elderly and how elderly get treated, or how much people suffer just because of old age. And then, this is not a comprehensive list, but these are just things that I've sort of thought of. I'll put in to just give us a bit of context. And then at the family level, we also see all sorts of vendetta, or all sorts of disagreements going on, and people not agreeing with each other, or even hating each other, or failing to coexist together properly. And again, suffering at different levels. And then if we look at world of work, so there is a lot of rivalry, a lot of jealousy, a lot of probably sometimes unjust things that happen, discrimination that happens, bullying that happens, and things that don't really make sense. And all sorts of things can happen at work level, and it could be some milder form of negative things, of people just being overworked, which is very endemic at the moment, or maybe for a while, where people have left and don't get replaced. And it obviously creates pressures on everyone, and it just makes everybody cranky. Everybody is overworked. You ask somebody else to do some work for you, and they can't do it because they are overworked, and you are overworked, and everyone else is. And it just have that vicious circle of getting everyone in that sort of mood. So there might, as I said, there might be some others that I have not noted here. And then, so these really are nothing new, right? So they have been going on forever. But nowadays, a lot of it is in our face, and the role of media and technology cannot be ignored. And if we think about of our children these days, and our teenagers, and who are all constantly on social media, who never switch off. And so these are things that really impact on their health as well. I mean, like everything, social media can be used for very good use, but it can also be quite negative. So now we have a lot more access to news, so we know everything in all the corners of the world. Things just happen. There are channels that give us 24-hour news if we were to stay up 24 hours and watch. And there are some of us have got little highlights or notifications that come sometimes on our phones if we're following certain news or of all sorts. It could be, politics or whatever, or even who's scoring championship goals, FA Cup goals, or whatever. So things just come to us at all times. And then there is a lot of sensationalization. I don't even know whether that is a word, but you know what I mean, where things get a different proportion and a different type of coverage, where things might be exaggerated a little bit, or where there might be a bit of an unmeasured focus on things that are bad or likely to grab people's attention. So, it doesn't mean that there are loads of great things happening as well, but perhaps they don't get that much coverage on the news, or it's not something that we access that readily, because this is not what make people look at news. And how, I don't even understand how the world of news works, how people make money, or and all that sort of stuff. But actually just saying, things are going really well, and these are these great acts of kindness. I mean, they are not things that actually make the news in any way. And also we have to acknowledge that there are better reporting, so people are real time reporting from everywhere. And also sometimes now, despite everything, we do have biased reporting for at times anyway, of things that we probably never could get before, and people, where people didn't get access or whatever. But we, even from these places now, we get to know what's going on. And then comes the phenomena of fake news, which I think is probably a new phenomenon. So fake news is where people believe a version of truth that may not be the version of truth. And there is a lot of that happens, and that's again only because of the ease with which news can travel, and just saying something and then people keep forwarding things to each other on social media, and without sometimes verifying the veracity of a piece of news, and then all of a sudden these make headlines. So as I said, social media, so that's another big one where people kind of are constantly engaged with what's going on, and again that comes with its own problems. So some people don't know how to switch off from social media, or how to kind of use it in a way that it's healthy. So that's another sort of thing. So I don't think I meant to put fake news twice, but so then there is this whole idea about, people now, everyone is able to give an opinion about everything. So it's just so much easier now for people to give their own view of something, of what's going on. Previously, there were, a certain group of people who were able to comment on a situation, or I mean, everyone was probably able to comment, but then it wouldn't reach other people. But now, everyone can just do a video. They can go on YouTube. They can go on, on social media and make their opinions known. And obviously, sometimes it's very good, and sometimes it's also very bad. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. So these are really the context of what I want to be looking at today. And also the context for the discussion in 2 weeks' time. So now, where do these negativities come from? So why do they arise, and why are they everywhere? So I've said that they are everywhere because of media. They kind of are easier to reach us. But then where do they come from? And are they something new? Are they something that we should be surprised about or not? So in some ways, negativities and sufferings, I'm using these words a bit together now, is part of this circle of life and death. I mean, these are part of life, and these things happen. They are in that order of the world that we live in. So we might not like it, but this is what actually this circle or cycle of life and death is about. And the Sanskrit term that we've used is samsara. This is what samsara is about. So there are good things, there are bad things, and suffering is inevitable. I'm not saying that, it feels good or it should happen or whatever, but it's just part of the world order. And that's what happens. I was talking earlier on about old age suffering, and again, that's part of the order of the world, where the law of the universe, where we kind of born as a baby and then the body decays, and all that sort of things happens. And so then also what the scriptures say, well, that's a very big part of what the scriptures say is about this life is characterized by suffering and moments of happiness, of course, as well, and what we kind of nominally think what happiness is. And so it, and then what also the scriptures say, so the next 2 points is that we are now in this time of the world. So the cyclical sort of moving of the of the ages through which we are. And at the moment, we are in something which is called Kali Yuga, and at a time where values are not upheld, and also what the scriptures say, this is likely to get worse. So I don't exactly recall how much into it we are, and sometimes kind of jokingly people say, "Oh, this surely can't get worse," but it will get worse, and a lot worse as well. And so that's actually not meant to make you even more depressed, but just actually being totally aware of what's ahead is kind of helpful, because we need to know how to behave ourselves in Kali Yuga, how to live in Kali Yuga, and how to make the most of it. So then so basically the point that I was trying to make so far is that these negativities are something that we have to accept as part of life. And if we think that we're going to be able to eradicate all these negativities, all these things, then we are completely disillusioned, right? So this is not going to happen. I mean, of course, there are some things we can do, but actually to get rid of all suffering or negativities in life and make this utopian sort of thing is not really realistic in many ways. I mean, at an individual level, we can do that, but at the world level, we can't do that, and that's the way it is. And so the scriptures also talk about the biggest enemies of the individual and therefore the world. So when we talk about the world here, I'm not talking about the physical world. I'm talking about the world of the sentient world, of where human beings are ruling, where human beings are creating things. So the biggest enemies that face us in this world are these four. I mean, there might be a longer list or a smaller list, but these are the ones that I want to focus on today. They are desires. So a lot of things that people do, a lot of the negative things is driven by desire. So people who commit crimes and they have their own desire for whatever. It could be a desire to be famous, a desire, just to whatever their desire is to do that. And that's why they do it. So a lot of it comes from desires. So sometimes I'm not saying that all desires are bad, but I'm just saying that some desires can be very bad. Of course, desires can be very good. You've had a desire to kind of listen to what the scriptures have to say on how we need to live our life. So then that's surely a good desire to have. But desires sometimes, if they are unchecked, or if they are driven by greed and anger and all these things, then they might be something really that causes a lot of problems in the world. So if we kind of trace most of the problems of the world, we can see that it is desires of individuals. And then sometimes it could go on to a group of individuals that leads to what some of the problems that we have. And then greed is, there are some of the sayings that say that actually the world has enough resources to feed the world and to keep the world happy, but then it does not have enough resources to accommodate for the greed of people. So greed is something that is really at the source of a lot of problems, where people want things for themselves, want to keep on acquiring, and also at the expense of others. So the greed, acquiring when it's not affecting anyone else, when it's not causing any other disturbances to others, then there is, in theory, not much problem with that. But still, it is. But here we're talking about greed, where it has an impact on others. So it could be impact on Mother Nature, impact on the world resources, scarce resources that we have, and it could be the impact of the greed of companies wanting to make profits, and the impact that has on lives of ordinary peoples as well. So all this is a big problem about why a lot of the things that we see in the world happens, is greed. Then comes miserliness, so where people want things for themselves and are very selfish about their needs and don't want to share with others. And we see that at all levels as well, where people are wanting to get rid of migrants. People are wanting to get rid of certain sections of society, where people do not want to be generous enough towards others, to give others a home, to give others food, and to help others. And but they just, whatever they want is just for themselves and probably their family as well. So that's again another big enemy, and that you can see what I'm trying to say, and how this can link to a lot of the problems. So so next time when we will be doing that, we'll be looking at some of the examples. I'll be asking you to bring some examples in class so that we can then trace those back and see where all these problems are coming from. And then finally, anger. So people are angry about certain things. So they are resentful about certain things. Sometimes it might be with reason, and sometimes it might not be with reason. But then anger in itself is not very helpful. It can be when it kind of causes somebody to act in a very selfless way, and for a good cause. It might be justified, but then a lot of the time, anger that people have are very unjustified, where people don't really know why they're angry about something, why they want certain things to be different. They don't really know. They just adhere to a view that they don't even understand, and they're angry about a lot of things. And there are people who get angry about very little things, and there are people go to the supermarket and they don't find an ingredient that they want, and they get very angry. People are not people who and can be even abusive to staff. All sorts of things happen where people get angry, and then so really, a lot of the negativities that we see in the world that we saw on the previous place come from these. And they come, and all these enemies that I've talked about lead to these three types of behaviors, or not. So there is these three words that we have looked at quite a bit over the talks. The three words are tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. So by tamasic, we mean here behaviors that can be directly injurious to others. And so a lot of the behavior that we see nowadays about what's happening in the world, cost of living crisis, is very tamasic sort of behavior, where people are wanting to cause damage to others. And then there are rajasic behaviors, so a bit of that as well, where this is where people care about only themselves and the one close to them, and nobody else. And then sattvic behaviors are where people care about the wider world, the society as a whole, wanting society to progress, and not really think a bit beyond what is good for themselves, and will only do things that are good for them but also for others. So really, what I'm trying to say is that here, things inside individuals and individuals or groups of individuals is what actually lead to all these negativities that we see in the world that manifest. So we can have a debate about that next time. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. So then. So I think, so that was the point that I've just made. So it is anger, greed, and desire that manifest as the negative things of the world. So I've already talked about this point. So things that are inside then get manifested, and that's what is happening a lot in the world. And then the third thing that I wanted to talk about is karma. So inevitably it comes around in almost a lot of the talks. So by karma here, I just mean the law of action and reaction. So as we know, life is governed by a set of universal rules, and what science, for instance, has told us is that where to every action there is a reaction, and that is also true in the world of karma and in the world of what is happening to us. And um, so really, when we kind of see what is happening in the world, this is also our karma, whether we like it or not. Okay, so how, when we get born and why we're here, is to the reason we're here today. I mean, I mean in this life, is in this body, is to reap some of the fruits of our actions that have been performed in previous however many births, that are now ready for us to experience. So as we've talked about in the past, so there are pleasurable experiences that we have, and there are not so pleasant experiences that we have as well. So we, for those of you who remember, we had looked at them as red apples and as green apples. So where the red apples are the pleasurable things that happen in our lives, and it could be thoughts as well, and then the not so pleasant things that happen in our lives. So similarly, when we are in this world where we have to be living in a world with so much wrong things going on, then this is also part of the whole grand plan. So this is something that we have to accept. So there are some people who reject the law of karma, who just think, oh, this is all random, and that's okay. I mean, that's their view of the world, and it's not correct, but they don't want to kind of really explain the things, because when we all say that this is all chaotic, this is all random, and that doesn't make any sense. That's not very logical at all about what's going on. But each to their own view, and I'm not even asking you to believe this, but this is what the scriptures tell us, and it's up to you to kind of start thinking about it, and then have your own view about this, and your own understanding about this, and to question it as well. So then what we do is we start understanding the role of Ishvara. So Ishvara, as I've always used the term Ishvara instead of God, because I didn't want God to be, the concept of God to be associated with a particular God or whatever, but the concept of the creator, or the concept of the sentient being that's behind all this creation, if you like. So the role of Ishvara as the giver of those results of action. So again, the fact that we've got these wars and we are experiencing them, and some are more in the front line than some of us are, or whatever. And again, this is our karma, and there is the individual karma, what we are all going through, and then there's the collective karma about what's happening to society as a whole. But then, when we think about collective karma, it is like we're all meant to be undergoing something like that together, but it doesn't. But then, how we experience it is very individual. So even though we're all living, we all lived through the pandemic, but then we all had very, very different experience of the pandemic. Some people really struggled, some people loved it to a certain extent, and all that. So within that collective karma, there is, it's very individual how people experience it. And again, that comes down to people's own predispositions. And so again, that is something to understand, why these negativities happen and why we have to experience them. And this is all this grand plan of what needs to happen, and this whole law of action and reaction, what is happening. So it can be very hard to accept, but that's it really. And the more you think about it, and the more you kind of go deeper into your understanding of this, it might be a bit easier to understand. So yeah, so that's part of that. So then this brings us a little bit to our responsibilities. So what do we do with this, with, amidst all these things that are happening, and what do we need to do, and how do we do that? So our responsibilities as individuals, so what our scriptures say, our scriptures is a lifestyle that shows us about how to live our life, and gives us the highest things to aspire to lead a meaningful life, towards a noble goal as well. So whatever we do is to be guided by dharma. So by dharma is a word that we've seen over and over again. And so I'm not going to go into all the very sort of detailed description of dharma, but then all I want to say is that dharma is a set of universal rules that which upholds the fabric of society. So we've got all sorts of rules. We've got rules about how nature behaves. So we've got rules about gravitation, and even though scientists have discovered it, but they've not, they weren't the ones who made these rules, and it didn't occur just randomly. And also we see that animals have their own sort of set of rules. Traffic in a city has its own sort of set of rules, what you're meant to do, what you're not meant to do, how traffic is meant to flow, and how in Germany you can't cross the road, even if there's nothing coming, if the man is showing a red light, whereas in the UK people just go, sometimes there might be a little bit of different slight variations of things in countries or whatever, but overall rules that guide human beings are fairly universal set of rules. So we all know that quite instinctively. So there are there are many reasons why, even knowing this, people do something different. But actually, even the criminal knows that it's not good to kill, or but they've done it nevertheless. So they wouldn't say, oh, it's a good thing to do necessarily. Deep down, they would know that, apart from some exception, disease or whatever. But generally there'd be a set of rules and behaviors that we need to uphold. So there are loads of them. We've looked at them before, and we've looked also at the yamas and the niyamas and all these things that we need to lead our life by. So the other thing that one really important thing that the Vedic wisdom teaches us is that we have to do what we have to do. So this sort of version of things is a very duty-based role and duty-based society versus a desire-based society. So I'm making very stereotypical sort of comparisons here, but in England or in the West, a lot of time people want to do what they like to do, and this is what they want, and then they just go ahead and do it. But a lot of time there is nothing wrong with that at all, about doing what we like to do, and it's not saying we don't have to do anything that we like to do either. But sometimes the likes that we think that we want to do may not be very sattvic. So and earlier on, I took the word sattvic to means that it's not very selfless, or it's not just good. It might not be good for us and for society, or it might just be good for us, in which case it's rajasic, and it's bad for us and for everyone else. Then it is tamasic. So here, our likes is to be guided by our likes and dislikes all the time might not be the right thing to do. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and we need to have that wisdom to know that. So what the scriptures tell us is we all have certain duties, and sometimes we have to go along with these duties, even if it is to our expense. And so one example that we can look at is in the Bhagavad Gita, where Arjuna, the warrior, was in a battlefield, and he was to fight his cousins and his relatives because they were not dharmic people, because they had done a lot of injustice. They had Arjuna and his brothers, and even with Krishna, had explored all avenues of making peace, and everything failed. So war was the only option. So Arjuna didn't want to fight the war, but then Krishna started explaining that actually sometimes this is what you have to do. So you have to go for a war. And so sometimes we have to do what we don't like if it is the right thing to do. Sometimes we have to undergo surgery, even if we don't like to, because it's what is best for us. Sometimes we have to adopt a different lifestyle to help this body. The lifestyle that we have doesn't suit the upkeep of this body. And then sometimes we have to do things that put others first and put us in the background for a bit. It doesn't mean we neglect ourselves, but it just means that sometimes we have to put others' needs first. And when that happens, you will know. So, this is what the scriptures tell us. The scriptures tell us is, we have to do our duty, and again, our duties are based on our roles in society, and our and also what stage of life we're at. So whether we are at a stage of life where we kind of need to go to school, and learn, whether we are at a stage of life where we need to be accumulating wealth for the family to feel secure financially, and that sort of thing, or whether we are at a stage of where we are kind of maybe finishing with our work life, or all these kind of things. So whatever we need to do will depend on where we are in that bit. So really what one of my teachers always says is that to be happy in society, it is, the secret is not to love or to do what you love, but is to love what you have to do. It becomes a lot easier. It's like, okay, if you know that you have to cook every day, you've got a family to feed, and you hate cooking, it's not going to help anyone. And if that's what you've got to do, you can't afford to cook, and there's no one else to cook, and so then you better love it somehow. You better like it somehow. Develop techniques for you that will help you to do it. Just have things that will help you. For instance, have some recipes that you like. Just keep them handy, or make a plan, or get a little bit of help, or buy some of the things that are probably pre-chopped, or maybe whatever that will help you to make you like what you have to do, or at least not mind it, or do it in a sort of indifferent sort of thing, rather than actually resenting what you have to do. So that is the secret of leading this life of responsibility. So I've got a bit of something that wasn't meant to be in there. Okay, I was meant to look for a translation of this, but I couldn't. Okay, so never mind. I'll explain what I mean here. So karma yoga. We've looked at karma yoga a lot in so far in our talks about what karma yoga is. Karma yoga is this idea that I was just talking about, which is do what needs to be done. So this idea of karma yoga is obviously one that's very much in the Vedas, but also it comes across in various things, in various cultures, or various philosophers, if you like. Or so this is a quote from Albert Camus in a book called The Plague, a French author. So what he says, so I just saw one of my friends has put this quote for something, and I just thought, oh, that's nice, that kind of resonates with my talk. so I stole it. And so it says the most important thing is to do one's job. So and then it says here that this is the only certain thing in our daily life, in our daily work life. So is to do what it is, to really do very well what we have to do. And the rest of the things outside that happens are superficial things, and they are quite insignificant things as well. They are things that are just being held by a thread that's got no standing, that's got no solid things, no solid foundation. And actually we can really get rid of all these. So all these peripheral things that happens in a day's of work or whatever, we can really get rid of. And the only thing that we know and we're sure about is we have to do is to have to do what we have to do well, our duty very well. So that's what it's saying here. So that's what this French quotation is saying. So it kind of, so the main point of what it's showing here, to go back to our topic, so I haven't kind of really forgotten why we're here for, but so there are a lot of distractions on the way to keep us from our short-term goal. So there are these are all the distractions that happen in our daily life where things are happening. And also what I'm talking about here is that all these negativities that comes in our lives are distractions. So I'm not saying they're not significant or anything like that, but they are distraction from our short-term and our long-term goal sometimes. Sometimes we need to take them into consideration, but sometimes we don't. So I'll come back to this point again about them being distractions. So again, so this idea of having to do what we have to do, our duty really well, is not something just in the Vedas, but it's something universal, right? So we all know that we have to be a good citizen, we have to do all these things well, whatever is expected of us. But the Vedas go a bit further, and then they say, well, actually, whatever you have to do it with love. You have to do it not resentfully, not murmuring, not sort of being, having this terrible frown on your face, or being really miserable to do it. And then the other thing that the Vedas say is that whatever the results that we get from our actions or from whatever we need to do, we need to accept as a gift or as something that's been given to us. Okay, so whether it is a result that we didn't want, whether it is a result that's really marvelous, that's exceeded our expectations, whatever that result might be, we have to accept it with the same attitude of gratitude, really. So that's what it says, and the Sanskrit term for that is everything that we get is prasad buddhi. So don't worry about that, but that's what it means. So whatever results that we get, we accept it. So just remember, we're not saying that we don't expect any results, because that's not true. We won't do anything if we don't want any results, right? So sometimes people say that, but that's not strictly correct. So what we mean here is whatever results, when we do our best, that's up to us. But what results we get is not in our control, basically, is what this is saying. And then also understand that Ishvara controls whatever happens. So this is a big one that people don't quite understand, but or want to understand. But in some cultures, people understand it, or maybe they don't, but they just say it. Is like in the Islamic culture, people say the phrase inshallah a lot. So that means this will. I'll meet you next week, inshallah. So whether I meet you or not next week will depend on Allah. So this idea of all these things are outside our control, and understand that there is this force that is beyond us, that is making things happen. So that's this idea of karma yoga. So then, when we are faced with all these negativities in the world, so here I'm talking about distractions, I'm kind of almost reducing them to distractions sometimes. And what we need to be doing is we need to be focused on our goal. So is this going to help us? How is this helpful for our goal or not? What is our goal is something else that we need to think about. Whatever we think our goal is to be a good person. Our goal is towards reaching happiness. And so the other thing, what we can, so once we are focused on our goal, a lot of these things that happen around will be distractions, and we will recognize them as distractions as well. So we would know that they are distractions. So therefore, what we want is, what we want to pray for is the wisdom to recognize these distractions and know what we need to focus on and what we need not to focus on. So we need also to be selective about what we expose ourselves to. So a lot of times we say, oh, actually social media is terrible. But then if we don't go there, we won't know, right? So we kind of sometimes think, unless being on social media is your work, is a central part of your job all the time, then otherwise for most of us, we have a lot of control about how much we expose ourselves to these things. And this is a choice. So, sometimes we might want to sort of secretly, we might want to know what's going on. And then we say, oh, I don't have a choice. It's there all the time, but you do have a choice. We all do have a choice. And whether you like it or not. And as I say, unless it is part of your job, in which case it's a slightly different story. But for most of us, that's not the case. And also we need to know what requires our attention and what does not. And then this is something that we need to think about a bit more is our opinion. So sometimes when we know about all these negativities that are going on, and we need to ask ourselves that question. So is my opinion warranted now? Do I need to have an opinion about this? So very often, especially in society, and where you think, oh, you need to actually be able to fit in society, maybe be able to participate in conversations, whether I need to have an opinion about something. And so a lot of the time, opinions can be of these different types. So opinions can be informed opinions. So sometimes if we're talking about, something that we work on and something that we're very well read on, then we can give an informed opinion about certain things. And then sometimes we can give an uninformed opinion, but there's no problem in that. If we want to give an uninformed opinion to say, oh, I just think it is a bit like that. But there should be a disclaimer, is that I'm no expert in this. And a lot of these fake news come because of this. A lot of these uninformed opinions are being passed on as informed opinions when they are not. So we need to know for ourselves whether, if we choose to give an opinion, is it an informed opinion and is it an uninformed opinion? And we make that clear. And then there is also, sometimes we might just be in a group of friends and we just want to talk nonsense. And that's okay too. There's absolutely no problem with that. Just a bit of banter sometimes, that's fine at a certain level. But as the spiritual practice increases, so these banters are kind of considered completely useless and unnecessary. So a lot of people you see as they get more and more into this spiritual life, they talk less and less about these things, and the little talks don't matter anymore. And also sometimes, not having an opinion is actually completely legitimate. Right. So we don't need to have an opinion about everything. So sometimes we might feel, people will make us feel that, oh, we need an opinion about something, but we don't. We don't really, it's absolutely fine to say that actually, I don't know anything about this and I don't want to comment about this. And that's fine too. And, so by not having an opinion doesn't diminish you as a person, remember who you are, doesn't question your intellect, doesn't question your credibility or anything like that. Not wanting to have an opinion about something is absolutely fine, especially when it comes to things that are a distraction for us and that we don't really know, and there is nothing we can do about it either. So then that's something that we need to think about how to tackle these distractions. So we'll look a lot more in detail about these. So then comes the big thing about our duty to others. So, you know, when we get exposed to something negative that's happening in the world, then the first question that we need to ask ourselves, can we do something about it? I mean, our duty is to be kind to others, to help others when we can. So remember that when we can, we're not meant to be helping people or others when we can't. Okay, so when we can we help someone or a situation? Sometimes the question is yes, and a lot of time people kind of say, "Oh, I can't, but you should." So they point fingers to other people. So by pointing fingers to one person, they forget that the remaining fingers are being pointed at them. You know, so we'll talk about examples of this next time. So I will give you just a quick example. So there were, you know, the hosepipe ban in Yorkshire, in South Yorkshire recently, and it's still going on. And then, you know, there is a drought in the country and people are quite oblivious to the fact. And then, can we do something about this? Most people are, I'm basing what I'm telling you on some Facebook posts that I saw people commenting on, and then some people were saying, "Oh, this is about all the mismanagement in the water industry," which might be true. I don't know, and that's not something that I've got an informed opinion. And you know, and other people are saying, "Well, I pay for my water, so I use my water." And you know, there is that sense of entitlement of something that they think belongs to them. And then there are people who say, "I'll do it anyway. It doesn't matter, and my plants need to survive." And then there are other people who kind of say, "Oh, we don't have water because we've been giving water to areas that have got more drought than we have." And there is some of this that happens in the UK where water gets targeted. So, and then they're like, "Well, this shouldn't happen." So these are people who don't want to help others. So it was so great reading these posts because you could just already see all these kind of behaviors. So yes, can I do something about this situation? Yes, I can. I can save water myself, because I know that the facts tell me that less rainfall has happened in the summer, and it is a fact. Or whatever people are saying might be true or not, but my responsibility is I can do something. So I take responsibility for my actions. And then sometimes we might be able to help, sometimes we might not be able to help. If we see calamity somewhere, maybe we can help, maybe we can donate if we want to, if we can, if we trust the sort of donation channels and all that sort of thing. And then sometimes we kind of think, well, actually, no, I can't help at all. But I've put yes, but no, but there, just to kind of say that there is always prayers that we can do. There is always keeping people in good thoughts that we can do. And that's something that is always an option. So yes, there's always something that we can do, but it might not be in the way that you thought that you might be able to help. So then when we see all these negativities, then we have to accept the role of karma. And this is not to say that, oh, bad for you, you've gone through all these things, that's your karma, so that's nothing to do with me. This is not at all what we're taught. What we are taught is to help people when we can. And I've talked about this point before as well, is when we're talking about help, we're talking about sattvic help and not rajasic help. So rajasic help is where you help, which is good, but then you also tell the whole world about it. You want everybody to know, and this is about your own glory. rather than actually helping that person, right? So that's what we mean by registic help. It's better than no help, but it's still not great. And also by helping, it doesn't mean taking over others' problems. So this is something that sometimes we get carried away a little bit, where we kind of, try and help, but then we absorb somebody's problems, we start living their problems, and that's something that we need to know as well, to understand that helping doesn't mean, investing every energy that we have in this situation. Is when to kind of take distance, etc., is something that we need to know. And we need to know when to walk away. So, for instance, parents in children's lives, when parents kind of need to let children do their own thing, or where a spouse or need to kind of, not interfere too much in the other person's lives in such a way that you dictate everything or whatever. So just to know about these things as well, I mean, at an individual level, but also at the macro level that we've been talking about, when we've got all these negative things happen, when we, if we see something that we think, well, actually, apart from prayers here, there's nothing much I can do. So I'm not going to keep on reading about this or doing this, because it's not really, there is nothing that I can do. I'm going to pray for those people who are suffering. I'll remember them. And that's all I can do. If somebody else tells me there's something I can do, I will. But then for now, there's nothing I can do about it. So finally, what I want to say here is that the change that we want to see to prevent all these negative things from happening to others is that change comes from us. Okay, so we will not be able to change the world, but we will be able to change how we see the world, how we accept these things that are going on, and how we make our choices that are aligned to what we want in life. So again, I've just got this image from the internet saying, make sure your mask is well adjusted before helping others on a flight. So if there is a change in cabin pressure, then you need to help yourself first before you help others. So this is again, us, what we need to do in this whole world of negative things. We need to invest in ourselves. That's the biggest thing we can do. We need to be serious about our spiritual practice, about our goal, what it is that we want to do. And we also need to accept the role of Ishvara when we're ready in our lives. Also, sometimes we feel very responsible for everything. We feel like, the success of all this depends on us. And but it doesn't really. I mean, sometimes when we can do something, then that's fine. But if we can't do, then we need to trust and surrender to Ishvara, saying, Ishvara, you've protected everyone so far. Please carry on doing so. And that's all we can do, is to actually take that sometimes we think, oh, we shoulder all that responsibilities. And why that is the case is because we choose it. We choose it because we don't trust Ishvara. If we trust Ishvara, we know that where our responsibility ends, where our realm of influence ends, we know that we are not this almighty that can change all these things. So therefore, we kind of surrender to Ishvara and recognize the role of Ishvara, and we don't have to shoulder all that responsibilities ourselves. We know that the Creator is there, the Preserver is there in the universe to preserve us, and we have to have that faith. And that faith comes with spiritual practice. It's not something that I can give you, or it's not something that I can make you believe, but it's something that as we carry on our practice, we feel it ourselves at an individual level. And so therefore, what we want to aim to be doing is this. So what is the relevance of this lighthouse? So, this lighthouse is there, it will shine a light even when the waves are very raging and the sea is very restless, and the waves are lashing around. So we need to be that firm lighthouse that's continuing to shine our light in this world of negativity. This is what we need to do. And then similarly, here there is the flag there, and we need to be that post. So irrespective of how the flag is moving, how many negativities are around, how many winds and all that sort of thing, we are this firmly rooted post. And sometimes the post gets overturned as well, but then it gets refixed, and that's what we do. So essentially, this is how we cope in a nutshell with negativities. So we will end here. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May the entire universe be full of peace, light, love, and joy. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om. Thank you, everyone.